We hope you can join us for this amazing evening, an evening with the champions at Pinstripes. Please click on our website, go on our Facebook page, purchase your ticket, and we hope to see you all there. Thank you.
I want to go into a couple different things. Also, Joel was quite a character. And you told me a story, and I want you to share with them. When you were going over the Alps, and you had the Mercedes with the bikes on the trailer, and you had, it was Joel, Roger, and Victor, Victor was a gigantic Czech mechanic, and I'm just going to let Roger take it from here.
Yeah, so we traveled from Belgium to Luxembourg and onto the beginning of the Alps. And the switchbacks, and Victor, Joel's mechanic, had been asking for the last hour, Joel, please stop for pee-pee, I need to pee. And you know, he spoke a few words of French and a few words of German, and he had been begging Joel, and I was starting to get worried because Victor was this huge guy. I thought he was going to kill us if we kept going. But so finally Joel pulls off at on a parking along the road. We already start going up the mountain, and Victor gets out, does what he needs to do, comes back to the car, and as soon as he to grab the handle of the door, Joel takes off, stops, and this went on for like 100 yards, you know. So finally, Victor gets all upset. He gets in the front of the car and puts his hand on the hood. And Victor and Joel start going forward, pushing forward a little bit more, and a little faster and faster. And Victor gets scared. He jumps on the hood and he's Fred Eagle, trying to hold the Mercedes onto the Mercedes, and the Mercedes staff between his legs. And there's cars coming down the hill, and they blow the horn. They think we have hit this person or something. You know? And so the next thing, he grabs the windshield wipers. Immediately, Joel pulls the windshield wiper, and he's like, things like this were pretty common with Joel.
Earlier this summer, we lost one of the top riders of the 70s in motocross, a very good friend of mine, Marty Smith. And Marty, I think, was, as everyone knows, was very big in motocross and influential in motocross racing in America after the Europeans came to the States in the early 70s, but he was just a phenomenon as far as how much talent he had, and not only that, kind of the lifestyle that Marty projected, that Southern California surfer and the long blonde hair and just oozing talent, but never a ill-willed word to say about any of his competitors, always a positive attitude. And I can speak a little bit how the Honda team was in the 70s, the mechanics and riders and Marty and myself. I mean, everybody were really good friends. After racing, we did things together, and we'd go to Mexico riding dirt bikes together and go to movies together. And to this day, I mean, Marty and I stay very connected, and it was a real sad loss for myself, but also the industry. And I know Marty was really at a good place in his life as far as his career and family, and regarding this upcoming event on October the 2nd, he was really looking forward to kind of being a part of this and being around the industry and all the other racers and all the motorcycles and the race bikes that he remembered from the heyday and all of his success in the 70s. So in any case, just a tribute to Marty and his whole career.
Marty, of course, being the leader of the team, and this, you know, there was probably 3 times as many 125 racers around the country as there were 250 and 500 because of all these kids that could now get this affordable, high performance competitive motorcycle. So Honda and Marty Smith matched at the perfect time. This good looking surfer California kid that was very aggressive and really stylish on the motorcycle. He was cool off the motorcycle. He had a desire to win. He trained hard, and you could see his spirit, and it matched Honda's racing spirit at the time. And those two, it grew on itself. And then because the sport was so big in California, and then it was starting to spread at equal enthusiasm around the country, it was the perfect storm. Marty was the perfect guy, the Honda was the perfect bike, and the sport was the perfect sport for both of them. And he propelled it from the Europeans first coming over to just dominating the Europeans at the United States Grand Prix in '75 and '76, and really, I think, set the tone for the '80s when Americans took over the domination of the sport. And Marty was the guy that led that.
One down here, he only hit one. Right here, he hit both of them. A perfect replication of his balls. We're going to take a plaster of Paris mold of this, and we're going to sell them. Everybody can hold them. Come on, give us a little something. The motor's down. The motor is just like. Motor's down. Shadow pipe's down. They don't always work great. They don't feel as good as many just got to run that. Hey, Rob, come on, act like you're starting.
Hey, Anaheim, 1981. What did you do to me?
I don't remember.
Well, I was there. I
Come on, put it up there. Put it up there. Come on. There you go. Get a picture. Show me your picture. Yes. Okay.
Look like you like
come on.
okay? We really don't like each other.
We're this close.
Okay.
All right. Awesome.
Where we're at this morning, we're rolling bikes in. We've got we got a truck and a trailer bringing things back and forth from the house and the storage units over here to Pinstripes, and we're setting things up for the display inside and outside the courtyard here. And we're also kind of trying to look ahead as the wet bikes get rolled on and off the stage as we kind of go through interviews for the evening. So we're trying to kind of get things prepared and lined up for that. And here you go. Now I can probably pull it up. I think.
got me squeezed into my son's coat. So Roger, you weren't teammates with Falta, but this was the bike. This is what I remember the first time seeing you doing the cross-up, which we'll talk about that in just a moment. But talk about the difference between a twin pipe, two-stroke, and later on down the road we're going to talk about the Suzuki 370 and all the different things you had going through. What were some of the nuances about the twin pipe that was different?
Well, the twin pipes is a result of the factories trying to make a bigger exhaust port, but at that time the piston rings were not the quality that they became later, and the big port would break the rings. So that's why CZ and Husky and a lot of the brands went to two pipes, although it was a single cylinder, but they put two pipes on it so to reduce the size of the exhaust port.
And Roger, I have a question for you. Back in when you were racing the CZs, elaborate on how different it was in the culture and your vans and the transportation to and from the races that it is and now in the current culture. And culture, like you were in the box trucks, I mean the small box trucks versus the huge rigs we have nowadays. How was that back in Europe, back in those transfer days?
Well, yeah, of course it was the same. It's all relative. It was the same for everybody. And if you had a nice little trailer, then you were already above average. But the big difference at the time was the bikes were much more susceptible to braking. If you overjump something or land that front wheel first, the front hub would break, or the forks would bend, or your frame would break, and you come back to the pits, and then your mechanic would tell you, "Oh, you stupid! Don't you know that you cannot land on the front wheel? You should land the back wheel first." So that was pretty much the attitude of I think all the European makers, and a rider had to pay a lot more attention to not break his bike and to nurse it to the finish line, and the top riders I think were very good at that. They knew what would break and what would not break, what they could get away with. So that was a big factor. And when the Japanese came, when Suzuki came, and then Yamaha and Honda, the attitude was completely different from the factory people. As soon as something broke on the bike, as soon as the race was over, you were looking for the nearest post office because, of course, there was no emails and all that. We had to go send a telegram back to the factory, but there was always a post office that was supposed to stay open in every city in Europe at the time, and we got pretty good at knowing where to find it and send a message back to Japan right away, and they would be very, very good at responding very quick and make improvements on the bike, and I think that's what made the Japanese take over in the 70s.
Let's travel back to 1970, the Spanish GP. Such a stellar year for the Husqvarna Marquis, along with Torsten and a factory Husqvarna racing team. Why was that so good for you guys?
The Spanish Grand Prix was always the first race of the year, and of course everyone was there with huge expectations for what they could do for the rest of the year. New bikes, new riders maybe. And here we are, with the CZ, Mako, Husqvarna, Boltaco, and others. And guess who? Joel Robert on that bike right there blows everybody away. Win both motos, totally dominates. And I can only speak for our factory when people came back and they said, "This is a revolution." They have mechanics. They have transporters, they have spare bikes, they have engines in the trunk to put in. And we're going, we can't compete with that. What are we going to do? Well, we had to, and it turned everything on its head. From then on, mechanics, transporters, Suzuki set the pace, and they took us years, if not more, to catch up.
Yes. Mark, you were a teenager racing in Southern California in the late 60s. When did you first see Torsten Hallman ride?
So yeah, I was racing, I don't know, I was 14, 15 years old, racing flat track and TT. That's what we had back then. And I'd heard about the European riders. Basically everything I could get my hands on that I could read about these European riders that seemed like men from Mars. I mean, their talent, and they were doing things that we couldn't imagine doing on a motorcycle. And I was lucky enough as Gunnar mentioned, Torsten first came here alone in 1966. And by the way, we're pretty disappointed he wasn't able to make it. He was going to be a very honored, important guest here, but I got some real nice correspondence with him this week to fact check some of my dates and share some of his insights. But he came on his own. Edison Dye, a very, very important man in our sport, was the West Coast importer for Husqvarna. And he offered Torsten $1,000 to come stay a month in America. And as Gunnar said, he raced, I think 29 races, or every kind of race. He won every single race. And it really captured the imagination of the American riders. But what Mr. Dye, he was a very, very smart businessman, very clever, and he realized, yeah, he was selling some Huskies through Malcolm Smith and people to desert racers and people racing in Baja. But what he realized, and what Torsten helped him understand, is the scope of motocross in Europe. And when he heard 30, 40,000 people at the races, his mind, just raced to what could this be? What could this sport become? I was lucky enough 2 years later, I think I would have been about 15 at the time, to go to a place called Saddleback Park with my friend Don Emler. Don's the founder of FMF, and we went to high school together. So here we are at Saddleback Park, 4th of July, it's a Wednesday, and Torsten had raced in Belgium the prior Sunday and had another event the next Sunday. But he agreed to come and race, and I'll never forget what I saw. I mean, it was like a man from Mars. I mean, he was so elegant in everything he did, and he was so smooth when he rode. They started the famous uphill start at Saddleback Park. They went up, they disappeared around the back, and I don't know, a minute and a half, 2 minutes later, they came back into sight, and it was Torsten all by himself. And I couldn't believe my eyes. He looked like he was in slow motion. He was floating over the ground. And about 20 seconds later, Preston Petty came along. No disrespect, he was the fastest guy at the time. He looked like he was going 1,000 miles an hour. He was doing tank slappers and just trying as hard as he could to keep Torsten in sight. But at that moment, standing there, I decided, I'm going to become a motocross rider and ride like Torsten Hallman.
So now that you're a factory mechanic, talk about your different riders. Obviously, Adolf Whale, Willie Bauer, and guys of that nature, Aki Janssen, who I always wanted to change the name from Johnson to Janssen because he was a hero back on that iconic bike. But how was it working, the cultural barriers, the language barriers, working with those riders back then?
Petrified. I don't want to be with them, If you wanted to work with Germans, that how hard that would have been. And so that was very, very difficult coming from Southeast Asia and not knowing the language. And it's very, very hard. Then I just found out after I learned the language how badly that I was behaved, because with those guys, and they starting to call all kind of names. That it was a bad thing that I learned a language, then I shouldn't have learned the language. So it was very, very difficult coming from Southeast Asia to work with these people. But I have to say that I'm very proud to learn German language and also the technical aspect of the language. And it is very fascinating to what I have able to achieve.
The best thing that I ever heard about my career was from Torsten Hallman. It was, I think, 2 years later in '68. He had crashed at one of the races. We were in Ohio doing another motocross, and his arm was in a sling and he couldn't ride. And one of the editors of Cycle News asked him about what did he think about American riders since he was here a couple times, and he said, well, they're all too old, too fat, and too slow. And he said there's only 2 riders in the United States that know how to ride, and it's Barry Higgins and Ron Nelson, who was somebody from California. And that thing stuck with me for the rest of my life, that I was going to.
So 23 season, your future teammate Garrett Wolsink was on a Mako, and I guess some rules needed to be changed because they felt that the Suzuki was a little light, and how did Suzuki handle that?
Well, at the end of '72, there was a lot of complaints that our bike was too light and that we had an unfair advantage, and I think a lot was driven by Michael and my friend Salvage. But anyhow, at the last minute, the FIM decided to put a minimum weight in the rules, and our bikes at Suzuki were already done, and they got really frustrated and did not have the time to redesign the bike and remake the bike. So what they did is just pour lead in the frame down tube and in the open spaces of the engine cases. And
obviously that completely changes the way that the bike handles, it responds to the bumps and everything. What did that do to you as a rider?
Yeah, I was bummed out, of course. The best part of where you had the advantage was taken away, and we felt it was unfair, and especially Suzuki. But we dealt with it, and we still managed to win the championship.
Just today, about maybe 10, 20 years ago, I think about my life. I spent time for motocross, for developing, and myself, I spent a lot of money to enjoy motocross racing by myself, and maybe all of you maybe spent money for one house like that. It is worth for me, and I should use another life. But just today, thanking to Terry's emotion for making museum, the motocross has a worth for life, and this kind of the golden age motocross bike will make some hint or some energy or some chance to spread motocross pleasure to from young guy to old man. The motocross is how so good, and so I need to talk about this one. This age, Honda Soichiro declared, all the Honda motorcycle must be 4-stroke. Right. So this is kind of under the prohibition of the engine development. So before the debut of this wax machine, Honda, in Honda, some enthusiasts started to make the prototype for motocross.
So am I right you said that it wasn't the factory that demanded the bike, it was the enthusiasts inside Honda started this bike before the factory told them?
Yes.
That's a ballsy move, folks.
Yes.
I'm telling you.
It's kind of the nearly 50% secret.
Yeah.
But anyway, some enthusiasts gathered and make some without making report to the company, but they draft some budget, I suppose, and they made 335B. And the 335B is no mark, nothing, just a black motorcycle. And this entered the before the year of the debut of this one. And at that moment, I just joined to the Honda R&D, and I've had and I saw some journals. Honda start secretly to challenge motocross. So I find who is doing this project. I look some places, and I found and I support. And someday, one day, I asked to my superior, I want to join to design this wax motocross machine. Then, after just asking to a superior, I want to join this motocross racing design. He said, my superior said, he's Nozue-san. Nozue-san said me, if you finish your work, your present work, you can switch to the project. Then I finished 1 week, and I go to a new project.
Racer mentality.
And so my father had this wise idea, wise, you get it?
Yeah.
And
pun intended.
He got the Pitton dealership because we didn't have anything to compete with the two-stroke. And about 6 months later, all of a sudden, this bike came out here, right here. And I'll never forget, you know, I'm a 15-year-old smart kid, and I told my dad, there's no way that will compete with the Pittons. My dad said, well, we're a Honda dealer. We're going to take the Pitton and this brand new CR125 to the Austin race, where there was a big Aquafest race, and everybody in Texas was there. I said, Dad, I'm going to ride the Pitton. He said, you're going to ride that Honda one time in practice. So I took the Pitton out in practice, the first time practice. I came back, I got on the Honda, this beautiful thing right here. And I went out, and I came back 2 laps later. I said, load the Pitton on the trailer. And I started my career on this bike right here, the CR125 and 250s. And Rick, I mean, we could talk for hours about all the things that happened and so forth. But this is a great start to motocross.
A cool story, and Rick, you alluded to it a little bit, was when they needed testing on the RC 125s, and Tommy Croft and Marty Smith lived down in San Diego, and I lived near the factory in Gardena. Well, they couldn't get anybody, those guys, to drive up to test. So I would, after high school, I'd drive my Datsun pickup truck to Gardena. I'd pick up an RC 125 $50,000 works bike and put it on my pickup truck and drive by myself without anybody else and go test. And then I'd come back and go, yes, that tire worked. Yes, that shock worked. No, that tire didn't work. I mean, what could go wrong?
Not a damn thing.
You know,
Not a thing.
a kid with a motorcycle worth more than the house that they lived in, right? So anyway, it developed from there, and one of the fortunate things for me was, again, the competition, but being able to be around the fastest guys in the world, the Team Honda guys, and everything that Barry and Mark grew into the sport, and Steve Wise and I, and Marty Smith, and Danny Laporte, and Bob Hanna, all of us, were the next phase of speed. And now all that competition, I believe, you know, Texas, New England, and Northwest and Midwest, it coalesced on the 125 Nationals. So by the time the early 80s came around, the fastest guys in the world were from the United States.
Yeah.
And I feel proud to be kind of part of that transition, you know, of that growth. And Steve and I have made a lot of great friends. And the 125 Nationals, we made a lot of good friends, but we were ready to kill each other on the weekends.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about that. So at this time, Mr. Oska, I mean, I had a wonderful career at Honda, and it was because of people like you that cared so much. As I said, this was a side project that him and some other engineers took on. So I am so grateful that you, as long with Steve and Warren and all the other riders that rode Hondas, that you had that kind of insight and that kind of determination. So thank you very much. And one more time, one more round of applause for Mr. Oska.
Machine, rider, 一晩のチームワーク。
When we came over here in '69, the first race was always in Pepperell. You know, the Bob Hicks and the New England Sports Committee had this race at the ski facility. And we all went there. It was rocky and fast, but it was a very enjoyable place to ride. And that's where we met the first American riders like, you know, Joe Bolger and Barry Higgins and Sonny DeFeo and so on. And, you know, they were good, but I have to say most of us were better than they were. But it didn't take long, you know, they became really well, you know, into this motocross thing, and New England Sports Committee did a lot of work to promote, you know, the riders from the US and Canada too, for that matter. A lot of Canadians that came over. After I came in '69, I came back in 1970 and stayed more or less full time. And one of the first real memories I remember from those years was this 1972 Super Bowl of motocross promoted by Mike Goodwin. Mike Goodwin always thought that there should be a water hole. You know, you have to put water in a big hole he dug in the ground, and we had to run through it. And he thought it was funny and it was the real thing. And of course, we as riders hated it. So I found a way to ride on the side of the hole, more or less on the rim of what he dug. So he was there, and he pushed the straw bales closer and closer to the water. And we were trying to avoid the water as best we can. So I and several others found a way we could ride on top of the straw bales around the water. And when Mike saw that, he was not happy, you know, and there was a photographer there from LA Times. He took a picture of this and he put it in Times the next day. And the caption said, "One of the motocross riders is trying to avoid the water while a course worker looks on." And the course worker was actually Mike Goodwin. So he thought that was incredibly funny. And every time I would meet him in the years to come, he would say, "Ha, ha, ha, Gunnar, do you remember when they called me a course worker? Ha, ha, ha." And he did this for years. And, you know, so I guess he thought it was incredibly funny. I still have the picture.
Well, you know, every company had their own production bike, and you know, they were at varying levels. You know, Yamaha was pretty strong in that period of time in the off-road market, and you know, Suzuki was coming along. Honda was jumping into the fray with the Elsinore lineup, but you know, the bikes that were being raced were basically worst bikes. They were not really production parts. They were handmade and only for a select few in the U.S. and across the world. So while I was at, you know, Suzuki, we kind of got the old worst bikes from Roger and Joel. Those guys, you know, they made their way to the U.S. and so the spare parts were limited, things were used, and you know, so it's a little bit different than getting a brand new bike. But it was really fun, you know, for us. We you know, like you mentioned about the technology, it was advancing quickly. You know, with suspension was probably some of the big stuff, and eventually ignitions. We had points back in those days instead of a, you know, electronic box and CDIs. And so, you know, every year there was something new. We were making trips to Japan to learn about what was coming new and how best to work on it. So, you know, we were really fortunate, I think, to be there during that era, you know, and the crowds were massive at all the locations, and, you know, we really looked forward to that, you know, the young kids, and I mean, there were all age groups, and it was just unlike anything else you could imagine. You know, there are some museums around the country. The Barber Museum is pretty big, and they have, you know, products over the years, and the AMA Museum, they do their best. But as on the scale of bikes and, you know, specifically motocross, supercross type things, Terry's vision is unique in that it would only be that, and that it would also be international as well. So from the roots of this sport, you know, all the way through today, let's say, you know, he's acquiring bikes and items, you know, things that if anybody wanted to see where this sport came from and where it is today, they'd be able to do that. So, you know, him and Cindy both have been at this for a long time, sacrificing a lot, like he said, for, you know, the amount of money and things that he's put into it. And hopefully, you know, the OEMs here in the U.S. and maybe around the world will help him with this vision, and hopefully the fans will too.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please stand up for Mr. Terry Good.
I've been collecting these things for 44 years, and I've chased them all over the world, and I've had, as Ricky said, I've had a passion for motocross. And I'm just, you know, it almost hurts to think that there isn't a museum dedicated to preserving this sport already. It has such a rich history, and it's been around since 1924. The first race was held in Bagshot Heath, England, in 1924, and my friend Les Archer, his grandfather, was part of that event. And here we are into 2021, and most of us here are probably a product of the 70s, maybe late 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I moved to Chicago in 1984. I changed careers. I was a carpenter, or a builder out in Southern California. Moved to Chicago to try my hand at commodity trading. And, you know, I was blessed. A lot of ups and downs, but overall I did good. And that's a real aggressive business, and a lot of those guys that made lots of money in there, you know, second, third homes, private jets, just, you know, they lived the lifestyle. And I put my money that I made into these bikes. I went all over the world. I remember, I was just thinking back in the late 80s, early 90s, my phone bill, because there was no internet, my phone bill just creating this network was like $3,000 a month.
So Bob, when you were riding Suzuki twin shockers, correct? And then you got onto the monoshock. What was your first impression of the single shock, and then also when you got the works bike versus a production bike?
I don't know, the monoshock, it was okay, but I've been riding production ones, it wasn't that great, but the works bike was a big step up. You know, they're always the most innovative parts out there, and they're usually try to be on the weight limit, and they work well. They won't make a champion out of a non-champion rider, but they'll make a great rider, or a good rider, look great, I think.
What were some of the tech hurdles that you guys experienced, you know, when you were evolving? Because as you said, the production bike did one thing, but you were constantly evolving with new special lighter parts and stuff like that. What were some of the hurdles that you guys had to overcome? Because Bob, I mean, I'll be honest, you rode harder than anybody else out there. I mean, there was guys like John DeSoto who were big bike crushers and stuff like that, but when it came to just pure hitting shit fast and wide open, you set the bar so high. So what were the challenges of that?
I think one of the big things that we did that helped us win, you know, we had works bikes and production bikes. I can't remember the model. I think it was a D model that we actually raced in Supercross, and the bike worked really well. It was heavy, but you know, the suspension was really good, and the engine was a little slower. It was more of a standard type setup. And then we had the works bike that was lighter, faster, but didn't handle nearly as well. So, you know, somewhere along the line, we got a little creative, and with the help of a friend of ours in Atlanta named Joe Zappa, I actually took the bike, cut them in half, cut a production bike in half, cut a works bike in half, put the works bike engine in the other frame, and the biggest key was the shock was the carbon type shock, as opposed to the very technical Tilken shock that we had at the time. And like I said, it was hard to work on. Once it's up in the frame, you can't do a whole lot. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the first race we raced that bike was Omaha, Nebraska, Herman, Nebraska, and Bob swept both motos there, and it was quite a thing from that time on. Wow. From that time on, you know, things were good. The carbon shock made a big difference.
Now, we heard that Mr. Oska, on his side project, came up with the 125 Elsinore. Did Yamaha know, the factory know that you were cutting bikes in half and changing them, or it doesn't look like?
No, I mean, I think Roger explained how it was sometimes with the engineers, like they had the direction they wanted us to go, and they were aware that we didn't think the worst bike handled very well, and that the production one did, but it was slow and heavy, and we needed something in between, and we, I think,
they're two different departments. In 77, I think it was 77, I wrote a production Yamaha stock in the Supercross and won, because our 250 works bike was not working well, and it worked good, and he modified the production bike just by working on the suspension. And Honda was so lame at the time. Pomeroy's mechanic tore the bike down, thought we were cheating. We didn't even have new pistons for this bike. And so to show everybody that it was stock at the last Supercross, I raffled the bike off, and it's still out there now. And we rode a stock bike because it worked well that year. And Yamaha, I don't know if this is working, but Yamaha, the works department and the production department were two different, and they worked against each other, and they didn't let the other guys know, and it was kind of a bad deal. So once we rode the production bike, it made the works guys irritable, and then next year the bikes were better over there.
So now when Keith told you, hey, I got this great idea, I'm going to cut a bike in half, how long was it from beginning to end in between races that you cut two bikes in half and made one? And how did you feel about riding it?
They worked all week. They worked all week at night in a welding shop. It wasn't any time.
So you welded on it?
I don't know. No, we had a really, I welded, but we had the world's best welder welding, and we knew him.
So I think we had a race in Tennessee, a national in Tennessee, where we used a full-on works bike, and it wasn't good. It wasn't a good day. And I believe that was, I'm not sure of the schedule, but it was like a week. 1 week we raced somewhere, and then the following week we raced with a modified bike, and things got better.
So Bob, and I want to direct this to Roger too. You had to race against Heikki Mikkola on that bike, or something close to that, and also you had the two polar opposite of Bob Hanna, this crazy young California kid. So talk about the contrast of racing against them, and you also knew that Suzuki could have had that monoshock.
Yeah, that's
I mean, I don't mean to piss on your parade or anything like that.
Complicated question, but Mikkola was definitely my biggest competition in Europe, and until 78, I feel that our bike was, until 77 actually, our bike was really competitive, and Yamaha and the Suzuki were pretty equal. Maybe one was a little bit better on one track than another. But then in 78, Suzuki went so super long on the suspension travel. Maybe they were thinking about compensating for what we had lost with the monoshock, that they increased the travel. The bike is there, that 78 bike, and it was difficult to ride because there was so much travel, and you got on the gas, it squatted, you got on the brake, the front dive, and it was, bouncing back and forth. So, and then 79 was a little bit better. They shortened things back up a little bit, but Yamaha was definitely on top of things in the late 70s, and they had probably the best guy in the world in Europe with Heikki and Hanna in the US, so they had really good bikes and the best riders also.
And so we've been talking about why was Bob such a challenge for you?
He was tough, and when I came back after the European season, they had their nationals, and then we met for the Trans AMA series, and from the first race on, he was ready for me, and he used to come and rub the side of my bikes already, just going to the track, like on staging. So.
What did he just say?
So Hannah liked to rub Roger, and I think that's what I heard. Did you guys hear that?
Don't make me go.
But I'm really glad and feel that there was a really good part of my racing career to race with Bob, because it raised the level, and it was never finished with Bob, you know, and I felt that it got me motivated to race against him, because I remember in St. Louis one day in the paddock, I see this commotion around the Yamaha camp, and there is Bob on a punching bag on the back, attached to the back of his of the van, you know, practicing, and with a picture of me behind it. I'm sure you did not. That was not.
Hold on a second. Keith, I know you know the real story. Go ahead.
I know who put it up, because at the very first race, when all of these things were going on, I remember, I think we were in Middle Iowa or somewhere there, and I remember I'm in the mechanics area, but partly on the track, and all of a sudden I feel this bike go by me at warp speed, and it's this guy here. And I'm thinking, holy shit, he's trying to get me, you know? And so I'm firing him up. Next week, his face is on the punching bag. I'm gonna get that guy.
You know what this guy used to do in the signaling area? He would, you know, he would come around on your best line, and he would go on your best line with a signboard for Bob, and Bob was maybe already past there, like 30 seconds, you know, and put it in.
So you had to go around.
So the next time around, said, Keith, you're gonna get it. I'm gonna scare you. So I wheeled it straight for him.
See, they say this is an individual sport, but your mechanic better have your back. That's for sure. So Bob, I now want to go to you. Brash, arrogant, cocky, all deserving, good looking, great hairline, fantastic. Anyways, I can't compliment you anymore. But no, so now you've been dominating American motocross, but you know there's a guy they call the man. And he's not quite attainable like everybody at Saddleback every weekend, or whoever, all these people that you've been beating along the way. How did you mentally prepare yourself to go, I'm going to go after the best in the world?
How long can we talk? Because I'll
No,
tell you.
you go. It's your show. Take it away.
Want me to tell you what I was thinking today, my Roger DeCoster
Yes.
experience? I'll try to get it as brief as I can, but it'll be like...
Hey, are we okay if we go over on the Bob Hanna story? Woo. All right, Bob. Come up here.
Which mic?
Take the microphone.
Thank you. Move back there, will you, please? Now, I saw Roger DeCoster come in here today. I'm going to set the precedence, and I see people looking at him when he walks in. And they still look at him like 40 years ago, like he's Zeus walking in. And I'm laughing. I'm going, I'm watching you, some of you corn dogs. You're looking at him, and you're just going. And I know what that feels like, because I saw Roger the first time in '72 at the 500 GP. I wasn't racing. I wasn't even racing then. I was in high school. I come down. The guy goes, "You want to go see these Europeans?" I go, "Heck yeah!" I watch this guy all day, and I'm going. I mean, sure, he's God. He was God. The next time I see him, I would say we're going to be 3 or 4 years old. We're going to have to skip down. We're going to jump ahead 3 or 4 years. I'm a Suzuki test rider at the factory, and my job is to test all the new parts on the RMs, and I do that. I work on my bike all week long. At Thursday I leave. I go practice with my dad. On Saturday I race Saddleback. On Sunday I go where the most money is, and I was just racing Southern California. Well, one day I'm in the back working on my bike at the shop, and we had a shop there, and they had a few guys working on stuff there, but I was in charge of my own stuff. And nature was calling me, okay? You know what that means, right? Nature was calling me. I don't have to go into detail, okay? So I did not like the way the shop guys managed their restroom in the back, so I'm going to sneak up to the Japanese executive bathroom where they have nice heated toilets and clean. So I leave this shop for just a short time. And I'm up in the bathroom, and then I come back out. And when I come out of the bathroom, I'm coming into the main corporate offices, and it's usually a bustling place, people moving, people looking over the tops. And I come out of there, and it was dead silence. And I think, well, I'm either busted here, or the NAS is here to pick up the Japanese. I mean, I don't know what's going on, right? So I stand still, and I look around, and I see 200 people, and they're standing there like this, looking, and I go, what the heck are these guys looking at? And it's Roger and Wilsink getting a tour through here. Somebody's leading and walking them through, and everybody's just going, they can't believe he's there, right? So I go in the back shop, I go back to work on my bike, I go to the boys in the back, I go, you can't believe who I just saw. I go, Roger and Woolsink are up front, and they go, oh yeah, they've been back here talking to us for 15 minutes, where have you been? And I go, you're kidding me. Two most quintessential riders in the world come to the shop, and I was going to get to meet them, and I'm up. You know what I'm doing?
Taking a dump.
Yeah. So I don't get to see him that day. I see him walking out there, and we're going to jump ahead again here. We're going to have to jump forward about 13 months. Obviously, a couple months later, I get hired by Yamaha. I ride all year. We're going to go to the Trophy of the Nations in '76. I'm in Belgium. I got a mechanic that pushes me pretty hard over there, Bushka. He didn't really have much patience for anything but winning. And we're in Belgium. He comes up to me one day. He goes, okay, I got something special for you today. We have a spy that says Roger's going to be at his track at 2 o'clock, and we're going to go there and have you ride with him. I go, okay, that's great. So we go to the track. Sure enough, Roger's there. We have my bike out there. Roger comes out on the track. I pull in behind him. I'm going to stretch it, but maybe I was behind him 7 seconds if I'm stretching it. I wait till he comes around another lap. I jump in behind him. And there's going to be a moral to this story, so keep listening. I jump in behind him. I can't. It's ridiculous how fast he would leave me on the sand track, and it was fairly close to his house somewhere, I understood. And so I go ride by myself. I'm riding around, Roger's riding around, I'm riding around. When we left that day, my mechanic never said squat to me till we got in the truck. He was so mad, Bushka. We're going down the road. I'm not saying much, because I think Bushka expected a lot more out of me, right? And he goes, what was that out there today? I go, what was what? You and Roger. I go, what do you mean, what was that? I go, I couldn't stay with him. And he goes, what are you going to do about that? Now, this is a key point. I go, I'm going to wait. And he goes, wait? Well, for what? And I said, for him to get a hell of a lot older. That's what I'm going to wait for. Now, that isn't the end. That's in '76 in the Trans Am. We're going to fast forward to '78, the next time we really got to ride together at Unadilla. And it's the first moto. And I don't really, the first moto I don't really remember. We both got bad starts in the first moto, and we're coming up through. And we come on up there. I remember us passing Lackey and everything, and I'm following Roger around there because any idiot could follow Roger through the pack. An 8-year-old could follow Roger through the pack on a YZ80, because when he pulls up to you, these guys get the heck out of the way. They don't fight. He pulls up. They're moving the heck out of the way. They know it's a waste of time, right? So I can sit back there and follow. We get into first and second. Then the work comes, right? So I pass him. He doesn't pass me back. And I was happy but very sad too, because in my mind, I hate to say this, Roger, but I said, the old man is dead. And I was pissed. I go, come on. I expected him. I'm just waiting. When I went by, I'm waiting. I'm going, wow, he didn't run into me there. Wow, okay, everything's cool. I win, and obviously in the pits, I don't know what I was doing, but I'm thinking I'm the man now, right? This is kind of sad, though. I really thought this was going to be a duel. Next moto comes around. We don't get that great a start. We come up through. Finally, I passed Roger, and I said, oh, man, I was just bummed again, and I didn't have time to think long, and boom, I was out, and I looked over, and I remember saying, the old man is not dead. I go by, he goes by, and I had some crappy lines. I'll admit, this guy has some lines. I'm riding like a 125er, taking all the outside berms. He's doing about half the track I am. He's squaring stuff up, and he's just doing this, right? He squares everything, doesn't hit the bumps, and I'm outside going. I'm going 3 times as far as him, so I know I'm faster than him, because I'm going way outside, right? So we go back and forth, and then I hate to bring this day up, but I still don't know if he set me up for this, and I don't want to ask him because I don't want to have to rumble up here. I got a sore cheek. But I'm going wide, and he's cutting in, and we get together on the downhill. And at that time, I thought he did it on purpose, but we hit each other in the air like this. And the good part, I think, oh, at least we're both going down here. I should have, if I would have stiffened up, I would have probably taken him off. But I said, oh, this is going to be ugly. So I just jumped. So I go down in a heap, and I run to my bike, and I look for this sorry bastard at the time, right? I don't like him this day. And I look for him, and he's gone. He did not fall. The last time I saw him, he was completely sideways, and he's going down. I'm going, yeah, this is good. I'm like this, and here he is sideways. Well, he saves it. I get up, my pipe's smashed. I want to kill him. I want to kill him. I want to strangle him. I'll break his leg, right? And I chase. I can't catch him. And obviously, Roger knew that day in the first moto why he didn't pass me back. Why should he? This guy's an idiot. He rides like an idiot. He just let me win. And the second moto, obviously, he gave me a good trouncing. After the race, I'm going to go to this is the end of the story, and this is where I'm going to wait comes in. John Gregory's in this room. He drove me to the airport that night, and all I could do, he was trying to settle me down. I'm going to break Roger's leg. I'm so pissed at him. I can't stand him. I want to kill him. And he's telling me, settle down, settle down, settle down. And John looks at me and goes, we're going down the road, and he looks at me and goes, and I had told him this story about Bushka being mad at me, and I told him I was going to wait. And Gregory gives me this nasty look, and he goes, you think you should have waited a little longer? Later on, I got to work with Roger at Honda, and then I was on the same team. And then I had the great time and experience and learned to love the guy because all he did was work 7 days a week to make a bike that I could win on and give an old guy another chance at winning races. So he was on my team, and to have him on your team is like Steve Wise says, is to have Jesus on your team, okay? You can't lose. This guy can take a bike. If you give him enough money, he could be winning on this 59 bike up here. He could have the team winning on that bike, okay? Well, when Roger walked in today, I got a tingle of the back of my leg. I love him. This guy, Terry Good did bring the best rider in the world, no doubt. Thank you. And people say, oh, was that guy, I think Johnson was saying, or Steve Wise was saying, Steve was saying, what if you were in that era, would you win or would you win? I rode in that era, and I rode clear to 89. And I rode with O'Mara and Bailey, I rode with a lot of people. If you ask me what would scare me the most would be on a European track on a 45-minute moto with him and Mikkola, and you paid me to win, and you said you'd give me $1 million to win. In those days, forget it. You're not doing it. My theory worked pretty good on waiting till he was older, and I'm still waiting. Now I've waited so damn long, I'm so old I couldn't beat him if I had to.
Thank you, Bob. And I don't know, but I'm going to have to buy you the best champagne or whatever you like after this.
Anyway, Bob was an incredible aid to us in our early marketing days. And then the other thing, Bob and I have two things that we share in common. We both landed airplanes in trees. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. So that's our claim to fame there. As far as the picture is concerned, we had an incredible photographer at the time, and he bought that chair at a swap meet somewhere. Bob had come out that day, and Heikki was there already. And it was one of those things that really not much thought went to the actual picture itself, but they were both there. They both respected each other to no end, and I've had them both tell me that separately. And that photo is one of those things that it just happened. There wasn't a plan. We took it, thought it would be iconic and a real classy photo, and it turned out to probably be. It'll be around forever as long as the sport is, I think.
there needs to be some kind of museum like that because there's a rich history. I'm still learning now, so seeing YouTube videos of early scrambles in Europe and, you know, before I was even alive. So yeah, I'm very interested in all that and how it all developed. And so I could see these guys, you know, Terry is too, and the history. So yeah, it's incredible. So it's, yeah. No, I'm just flabbergasted. I'm just like very honored to have any kind of part of it, of all, you know, in it, and just like, so yeah, it's just, I'm very grateful just to be here, so yeah.
I think it's really a feather in Terry's cap that he could bring people together like this, especially people who are, of course, legends in the sport. Roger DeCoster, Keith McCarthy, Bob Hanna, and so many more that were here. The fact that they're behind the project tells you just how serious it is and just how people who are at that level in the history of the sport know that it's very, very important to have it and that eventually we will see it. And people ask me too about the bikes, and from a restoration point of view, because that's what I do, I restore bikes, what is that like for you? It's beyond anything. It's beyond my comprehension, really. Yes, I've restored a lot of bikes, but I've never restored a factory works bike. There are so few in the world that I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but it's the research it takes to restore that bike and to make it as authentic as it was back when it was raced. So you can find bikes, but it's the history, and the research must take an incredible amount of time to research the pictures and the history, and to get in touch with the people that were there, and hopefully they remember things accurately as well. So that's what goes into restoring a bike like that. Yes, we can all, not all of us can restore bikes to a certain level, but a lot of us can restore production bikes. How many of us really have the ability and the patience, and of course the expertise, to do what Terry has done here?
Well, the straw that broke the camel's back for me wanting to switch in 1984, actually from 1985 to 1986, actually happened in 1984. So we were able, Brock Glover and I were both able to win the championships. Actually, David Bailey was the 500 champion, and I was the 250 outdoor champion. And we went over to do motocross and Trophy to Nations. So in between rounds, we went to Sweden for the second round for the 250. And Brock had come over to do a supercross in Stockholm. So he basically got a bike from a shop, put a pipe on it, put a cylinder on it, and then Oleans set him up with complete suspension. Now during the season we ran a rear shock from Oleans, but we ran the Simon's anti-cav kits in the front. We just had basically an off-the-shelf piece. So our forks you had to run them really stiff and really harsh, and so you had to work really hard. I made that work for my riding style, but during that time, I see Brock on these blue upside down Öhlins forks, and Brock and I are neighbors, friends. We've known each other through childhood. I said, Brock, let me ride your bike. Like, there's no hesitate here, go ride my bike. So I go out and do some laps. Kent Öhlins is there, Stiggy Pedersen is there. A lot of the different people from Öhlins are there. And I rode it, and I'm like, I'm using so much more of the travel. It's carving the corners, I'm smoother. And I'm looking at my lap times, and I'm going faster and faster and faster because I'm trusting the forks more and more. So I said to Kent, I said, can I run these? Because Brock's going to race a supercross. Can I run these in the donations? He goes, yeah. I go, how much? And he says, nothing. We'll get you a pair. I contacted Yamaha, and they said no. I said, why not? He said, because it's not production, and we're going to stand behind them. We're going to keep our bike's production. I'm like, well, we're running an Öhlins shock. What's the difference if we change the fork? Well, that's going to change the look and the feel. I'm like, but it's free and it will help me, and I can go faster. And they said no. And at that point, I knew that I was going to quit riding for Yamaha. I loved everybody at Yamaha, all the mechanics, all the secretaries, all the managers, all the engineers, testing. I grew up with them. I started actually riding for Yamaha when I was 12 years old. So to leave them, it broke my heart because I love the people so much. But the politics and what was going on at the time, I felt they didn't want to win as bad as I did. I mean, they wanted to win, but there's a difference between wanting to win and saying, I will do whatever it takes to win. And so I was actually set to sign with Kawasaki. Talked with Roy Turner all year long. Ronnie Lechien had some issues in Japan with marijuana, and he got exterminated from Honda at the time. So right before I was supposed to sign with Kawasaki, I have videos of me testing the bikes, and I was ready to go. They called me up and said we hired Ronnie Lechien because he was younger, a couple years younger than you. And I told Roy Turner that you made a mistake, and he's like, well, whatever you think you got to say or do. I'm like, I'm going after your guys, you know. He's like, hey, okay, whatever. So I thought, well, I'm going to sign with Yamaha. And so I had an appointment to go up and sign with them on a Tuesday. And I got a call on Monday, and Roger DeCosta called, said, Rick, it's Roger. I said, wait, Roger, what's up? He says, would you consider riding for us? Because, and I said, because Bob Hanna was leaving. And I said, can I ride the bike? And they said, yeah, for sure. So I said, okay, meet me up at a local test track called Acosta. And I got there, and Tano, who was the engineer from Showa, liked my riding style, so he pre-built a shock for me. I got on Ronnie Lechien's bike, I raised the handlebars probably 2 millimeters. They set the sag, because I probably weighed about 15 pounds more than Ronnie. I went out on the thing, I was immediately comfortable. I wasn't impressed with the power, in a sense that it didn't hit as hard as my Yamaha, and it didn't feel brutal like the Yamaha, but it was like electric. And so you come to the corner, you just keep rolling it on, and there was no holes in the power. And then I'd come up to bumps, and I would wait for them, like I'd brace myself like I would on my Yamaha, and it would, and I was riding so much further down. First I thought it was too soft because I was riding so far down in the travel. But then I'm riding, I'm like, I'm coming into corners so much faster because I can trust the front wheel, and the wheel is following the ground. It's not skipping, and I'm not throwing the back into the berm and finding edges to go off. I can actually just, by being smooth and fluid, I can make time. And I said, I'll sign. And so so we got together, and I was supposed to sign, I think, for $200,000 for Yamaha. And Dave said, we have $125,000 for you. I said, okay, but I want big bonuses. And so I signed up, I'll be honest with you. I said, I want $100,000 per championship, and I want my contract to go up $50,000 for every championship I win. Me being as arrogant as I am, I'm like, okay, I can make $300,000 on bonus money, and then I can raise my salary $150,000, not to mention. And so I went into everything. And so we heard Dave Arnold talk about when Bob Hanna saying, you're going to pay me to lose, to get second or third. But I had my contract set up that if I win, I got X. If I got second to Kawasaki, I got 0, or a Yamaha or anybody else. But if I got second to a Honda, or second and third to a Honda, that I get a tiered, because you're going to do an advertisement with 3 Hondas, and that's worth something to me because I'm fighting and our brand is together. So Dave Stevenson and I wrote it up that way, and every contract that I had with Honda and Fox and Bell and everybody, I wanted incentive, because, and my dad, it was a little rough at sometimes because he would do the math and I would call him, he's like, how'd you do? I got second. You know how much money you lost? He would hang up the phone, write down all the money that I lost between Oakley, Bell, Fox, you know, all the Honda, all the different stuff. He's like, you know, you just lost 45 grand by not. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, I know. Trust me, I know. It's already burning inside of me, and I'm ready to go test and go be faster to not lose again next week. So yeah, that was a straw, long story, but that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and that's what created the relationship with Honda, because they were committed. They would do, between Dave and Roger, they would do whatever it took. If I was at a Supercross on Saturday and said, I need to ride my race bike on Tuesday, Brian Lundis was the same way. We did that. I crashed in Houston. Houston's a long ways from San Diego. I said, I want to practice Tuesday and Wednesday on my race bike. He was there, bike was prepped, we raced it, he re-prepped it for that weekend, and then I went out and won the first Supercross. So when it comes to motocross, we have to preserve what was in the past. You know, I was from the generation where I had magazines, and I looked at Cycle World and Cycle News East and Cycle News West and Motocross Action and Dirt Rider and all these different things throughout the years, and I would get the videos and I would see a ABC Wide World of Sports, or I would, you know, whatever it was. Anytime that I could see something that was motocross, I wanted to know about it, and I appreciated it because it kind of got glamorous in my era. You know, we still had box fans. I thought I was the big man on block because I had a fold-out cot in the back of my box van. So I was a superstar, you know, and I had a sleeper in the back of the box van so I could get up in the morning, rack out in the back of my box van, have my mechanic drive me to the race. I sleep, I get up, and I had my things going on. But I knew the sacrifices that guys like Roger DeCoster and Torsten Hallman and Joel Robert and the list goes on and on. John DeSoto coming over from Hawaii. I mean, imagine that, an island boy coming over here and racing for the factories and doing all the different stuff. And the list goes on. I don't mean to cut anybody out, but these people were pioneers, and they came over here and they did this, and then Americans went to Europe and all the different stuff, and the money kept going up. And then guys like Marty Smith came on the scene, and the money went boom, right? Then Bob Hannum came on the scene, the money went boom. And now what do? You can't just stop there. I want more money then, and so on and so on. And so the reason I made the money that I made was from the generations before me. And the reason I tell that long story, because the current generation forgets what it takes to get here. And bikes are so cut and dry now. They're so good. I mean, they got triple clamps with 1 degree of angle, with a 2 millimeter rise in handlebars and this and that. And we heard stories last night of an engineer in Japan taking his own money and as a side project builds the Elsinore 125. You know, Keith McCarty and Bob Hanna cutting a works frame in half and a production frame in half, and not telling engineering, not telling the factory, and putting it together and going and winning a national with it. These kind of things the current generation is not going to know, and the world needs to know this, because they look at motocross and supercross now, it's so glamorous, and they're superstars, and they're making millions of dollars, and they retire without a big injury or whatever, and they go on to do whatever the hell they want because they have the money to live that way. God bless them. I get that. But if you don't preserve, and the next generation doesn't appreciate and see and look at what we had to go through to get here, it's just going to be lost. And so what Terry's trying to put together with the millions of dollars that he's invested in bikes, in memorabilia, in just everything, you just all of that, the world needs to see it, and that's why this museum is so damn important.
So they come up with the money. So the moral of the story, you know, I guess I'm up here telling all these people, but, you know, being from North Carolina, and we had to do whatever we had to do to make ends meet or what have you. But we felt like if we got that bike, which really that bike wouldn't have helped us or wouldn't have helped me. But the moral of that story, we could have probably sold that bike back to the factories, and we would become rich guys then.
So the motivation wasn't to race it. The motivation was to get it, turn around, sell it back to the factory.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to come back and we
See,
didn't know
the truth just came out, people.
So, you know, y'all heard it, and I guess y'all probably heard that story a million different times in a million different ways, and goodness gracious, believe me, I heard it firsthand, you know.
Well, hold on a second. We also, I need Gunnar Lindstrom to come up for this one as well, because we had a little conversation about a certain amount of money that he would carry, and he was at risk.
I started at Honda in '74, and Mickey was on the team, and you can see he's about the nicest guy in the world. And, you know, so he was one of the guys, I was the new guy, and he was, I mean, we got along really well. So obviously somebody cooked this scheme up besides Mickey. He got roped into it, from what it sounds like. But I guess the whole claiming thing, you know, I don't know if that's a good rule or a bad rule. I think it dates back to dirt track racing and trying to keep the cost down. I don't know how that's different than motocross, other than the factories were engaged in building things that were really exotic, and the curve of development was really aggressive. And you're racing all these hand-built magnesium, titanium, exotic prototypes, and they're changing every second, third month, you know. And so it kind of was oil and water. And but in any case, that the whole claiming thing put a scare. I mean, yeah, the rule had always been there, but nobody had really expressed it or tried to pull it off.
And nobody had the balls to do it
so,
until you, Mickey.
So, I mean, you know, in hindsight, I'm not making, so, I mean, Honda immediately, this Type 2 125 came into the championship late for us, and Hannah had all this momentum with the monoshock, and Marty raced that bike for 3 races, and then this claiming thing comes up, and the Japanese are like, this is their brand new thing, right? And they were like, you mean we're gonna lose this thing for $2,500 or whatever it is? So they lost interest in nationals as secondary. They pulled the bike from competition. So, and in response to that, going forward, I think, I don't want to call this collusion, I'm not a legal person, but everybody got together, so the factories, they got works riders and support riders, and then these team managers like Gunnar, I would never participate in anything like this, but then they started carrying checks around for all their riders, you know, let's say, I don't know how much, so it'd be $15,000, they got this thing chained to their wrist, that was a lot of money back then, and then if anybody ever claimed a bike, there was like 3 factors that jump in, and your odds were 20 to 1, you know.
So and Gunnar, tell us that you were an assigned risk when you were carrying that much money around?
Well, we have to understand first how the claiming rule worked. So any rider in that particular race could put up $3,000 and claim the bike of any rider, usually the winner, of course. But the fact was, if there were 2 or 3 or 10 that claimed it, there would be a drawing out of a hat. And you would put all these numbers in, and you would draw it, and the winner, of course, would claim the bike. Knowing that, us team managers had checks with there, so if there was a claimant, then we would all stand around the Honda referee at the 29-minute mark, and we would say if somebody would come there and drop the $3,000 check. Then we would bring our checks out, and we would, of course, be able to claim 1 check for each rider in our team. So where there were 5 or 6 riders, you know, usually 4 in the regular and some support riders, we had all these checks in our briefcases. And I had to go and answer to the Honda financial director saying, why in the heck is this guy carrying around $30,000 in a briefcase? There's a financial risk. So I had to explain, and they went along with, so did the Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki, and others. So in this particular case, there was a drawing, and you lost. You didn't win the bike?
No, not 1976.
Exactly. I was part of the, and a few years later, 79.
That's Rotor.
That's Rotor. Claimed one of our bikes, Marty Tribe's bike. There was 15 tickets in that hat, and we draw the ticket, and it says John Rotor, and the bike's gone.
But Mark, you brought a professionalism and a passion and a racer mentality to the team manager business. And so if you could talk a little bit about that first, and then secondly, the evolution of what I think was one of the best 125s ever built.
Cool. I think the stories that were told earlier about the original monoshock are really important leading up to this. But I was asked to, the second year of the motocross school, I was asked, the Suzuki team wasn't doing well, had some good riders, but just in a bad spell where the bikes seemed to break every week, and the riders were crashing, and confidence was low, and we were just getting our butts kicked. And my boss at Suzuki asked me to go to the races and come back and tell him what I saw, and I did. And he didn't really like what I told him, but he said, good, fix it now. And so I became the team manager in addition to running the motocross school. And the first year was really, so that was 77, 78, our first season was tough. We didn't do much. It was kind of a rebuilding year. And, but by later that year, I recruited Mark Barnett and got Ken Howerton to come over, and Brian was coming up through the R&D, is that fair? The R&D farm team, so to speak, our mini bike riders growing up, and he was on fire, and so we had some more talent, and we worked through a lot of issues on the bikes, and thank you for your kind comments. I think we did work really hard. We worked 7 days a week, 20-hour days, trying to get this thing figured out. And then, as was described before, I think this happens a lot in business. If you miss a cycle, the development cycle in product development, you get behind, then you try to scramble to catch up. Sometimes it's worse, and that's what I think Suzuki did, honestly, is they got behind, and they rushed the first full floaters to us, to the team, and the first bikes I don't think were very good. They were pretty heavy. They didn't work that well. We really didn't want to ride them, to be very honest, at first. And then there was a lot of frustration with the dealers because dealers had the shocked bikes in stock to sell, and we were out testing these new bikes, and so the dealers were concerned they wouldn't be able to sell their bikes. But long story short, we worked really hard on the full floater. That year, took some weight out of the bike, about 10% of the weight out of the bike, and got it to where the riders were really comfortable. They got their confidence back, and as you say, this was maybe one of the best bikes ever built. So hopefully that's of interest, and it really helped the team start winning. And this guy, like I said, he was on fire. Him, Barnett, Howerton.
I grew up at Saddleback. I raced mini bikes there. I raced a lot of races there. I know the track. I know hard packed. So yeah, it was my greatest race. And so yeah, I kind of whooped, you know, I whooped them all that day. Like I beat Glover by a long ways, you know.
Don't shy away from that. So, how did you feel after the first moto? Because it was a 1-1 massacre. I mean, you crushed everybody. When you went out that first moto and you started taking off, were you shocked? Because I just watched you. You were just being Brian Myerscough and wide, inside, outside, doing everything just different than everybody else. But when after that first moto was over and you kicked everyone's ass, did you think, did everyone fall down? How did you feel? Did you just go, you know what, I'm on, it's my day?
Yeah, you know, I don't, you know, it's hard to really remember. I was just, everything was an accumulation of my whole lifetime to get to that point, kind of racing mini bikes, trying to be smooth, learning, watching Roger, you know, learning everything. I was like a student. I could name a lot of them guys that are on the, you know, I could name every guy that's on the picture. Europeans, I used to study that. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, I was kind of on. Here's another thing that happened. So I passed them at the same place, both motos. The first moto was on one side, outside, and the other one was on the inside at the exact same place.
So you passed Brock for the lead.
I'm sure he was pissed off because it's like, you know, he's a competitor. So yeah.
But no, as I said though, you can't always define how great a champion is by how many races he has won, but I think sometimes how great you win that race. So, Flying Brian, you've always been a hero of mine.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
You know, we're going to race this current bike, which Marty had, they called this thing kind of a Type 1. It's an evolution of what that RC 125 was with Otska. And, but they only had one rider fast enough to race Grand Prix and Nationals in the States, and that was Marty. They fly him back and forth. And so Marty was getting beat. It was difficult. It was Gastonnier in Europe, and that was a real bike with a real chassis and real suspension, and they were starting to get their engine power a little bit more controllable instead of just a peaky bike. And then in the States, the same thing. Bob and Yamaha came on, and we were put back on our heels, you know, with what we had going into the series. Broke down a couple times, and so this bike came late, this bike over here on the stand, and, you know, of course it was just a huge improvement. And the essence of the bike, to answer your question, in both bikes is, and what the groups have been talking about, I mean, suspension travel was at most 100 millimeters, and all of a sudden, you know, the Yamaha monoshock, from what I know and hear from Roger and Keith, it, you know, it got up to 150 millimeters almost by mistake. And so then everybody was going crazy trying to re-engineer their bikes for more. How much is enough, you know, and nobody really knew. And so these bikes were designed for 11 inches of travel, about 250 millimeters of travel. And so that's the essence of those bikes. And to obtain that, you know, the engines had to be made more compact with the countershaft sprockets closer to the swing arm pivots. And they're exotic. The effort made to try to keep the bikes light, even though, like Mark Blackwell just pointed out, you know, and they had a legendary bike when they first developed that full floater, but they also had a problem when you start adding complexity. The bike got heavy, and they had to work on that. So these here, they're basically Honda's regroup. They're counter to the monoshock and other things, the RMs even, the other things that were happening in the sport. And they were just long travel, and still relatively very lightweight and pretty exotic with the mags and the titanium and all the materials that Honda accustomed to using.
Wow, that's an incredible story about all the technology and everything went full force with Honda to get back in the #1 position. Great stuff. Your 1980 season, your career as a world champion, even winning your last Grand Prix in Luxembourg with Dave as your mechanic. What is your favorite memory from that, your last event in Luxembourg?
Well, I had this feeling when I went to that race that I was going to win it, and I wanted to win it, and I felt like nothing could happen that day. I was going to win no matter what, and it turned out to be that way. And on the podium, I decided to announce that was my last race, and so I felt really happy to finish with a win, and yeah, it was an unbelievable weekend. I had fast time in each practice and won both races with with a pretty big lead, and just was a good memory.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Smith. So,
Jeff, what's it feel like to be in Europe and having your country recognize you as a true champion of sports? It has to be just an iconic feeling in your heart. Tell us about that.
Well, it's something special, obviously, but I have to tell you that tonight is something special too. I'm absolutely delighted that there is going to be a specific museum in honor of motocross. Not just motorcycles, motocross motorcycles. I think that's wonderful.
Oh, man. All right, now if we can, we're about to wrap this up. If we could get all the VIPs, everybody that's in the house, please come up. We're gonna go for a group picture, and if we got a couple minutes left, we're gonna take some questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Ricky and Larry and all the guys that participated just did a phenomenal job. But behind the scenes, Dave Arnold, Gunnar Lindstrom, Kim Arnold, Adrian Lindstrom, Zap from Motocross Action, Bob Metzger. I mean, this was a 2-year project, and what a nice way to have a fundraiser and kick off our fundraising effort for the museum. A couple times I walked back to use the restroom, and even late in the show, I noticed the crowd, and everybody, every single person, I mean, no one was looking at their watch. Everyone was looking just intensely at the stage. I've never seen anything like that. And that's what happened. And so hopefully this is the start of this big effort of preserving this just rich history of motocross, and you guys were all part of the
thank you.
And my wife Cindy, you know, 44 years I've been collecting these bikes. They're in the house now.
How come you don't have a T-shirt on her besides the Mayflower?
I see enough of it.
She has relatives that were on the Mayflower. Yeah. So, but anyway, she has been such a hero, and I don't know how. I tricked her into marrying me, and I have no idea how she stayed with me.
Well, the one thing we do find important in our family is the Lord Jesus Christ as our Savior. And we really want to start this out right, make sure that we can digest this properly. Thank you all for coming. Like Terry said, if it wasn't for you guys, this would be almost literally impossible for us to do. So thank all of you guys too.
Great job. Yeah, wonderful.
Father, thank you for this wonderful time, this glorious time, Father. Thank you for the life that you've given us all. Lord, you put it in our hearts. God, it's amazing, Lord. You put it in our hearts to love motocross, to love motorcycles. And God, we just thank you for we being able to fellowship and be around those of the like heart that love this sport. Thank you for Terry and Cindy and all they mean to us and everyone here, Father. Lord, we just pray for a glorious time and just protect us all as we go back. And Lord, we thank you for this food and for this time together in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
What must it take to be called the man through a lifetime?
Every pair of eyes is riveted on the man and his machine.
Is it motivation, skill, talent, leadership?
Good job, man. Awesome.
One man stands today that claims that title. His name is Roger DeCoster.
Yeah, about the motorcycle museum, it's something that in the U.S. we're missing. There is places that have bike collections and all that, but nobody has specialized, or nobody has the selection of real factory bikes that were ridden by the top riders, as what Terry Good is putting together. And the most impressive thing is how passionate he has been about it. I mean, he has collected these bikes. I think he must have spent the last 20 years or more doing this, and spent a fortune on it, I'm sure. And to see his passion still today, after 2 years of being delayed and being challenged by the COVID situation, you know, it finally, he was able to pull it off. And it was really cool to see, I don't know, 400 or 500 enthusiasts following word by word, minute by minute, what was happening on the stage, even after we had been there for around the clock pretty much. And it was really cool, and it's something that in the future we can all be proud of it, and especially for Terry. It's like it became his mission for life, you know, and really cool.